What's up dudes, it's Jpeasy. As I mentioned in my previous video, this year has seen some fantastic improvements to PC hardware. Granted, you most likely can't purchase many of them. So in this video, I'll be going over hardware that will give you the best performance for Siege, as well as some mid-range and budget builds for those looking to upgrade or get into PC gaming for the first time. This year, two specific releases dominated the headlines for tech. They were NVIDIA's 3000 series and AMD's 6000 series graphics cards. First note, at the time of filming this, you can't buy these cards. They're not available anywhere. So even if you wanted to, they're just not available. Demand is so much higher than the supply, and this is for a good reason. This is the highest jump in performance we've seen in graphics generations of cards in about a decade. If you want to have one of these cards in your system, you'll have to get a pre-built from a company such as Jpeasy or CyberPower. So with these current cards combined with a top processor, which I'll discuss a little bit later, benchmarks are as high as 495 FPS on 1080p on ultra settings. The benchmark I just mentioned comes from the AMD 6800, which is the current top dog for overall average FPS, as well as has the highest 1% lows. What 1% low stands for is the lowest possible blip that it will receive in a benchmark. Please note that these benchmarks were not performed on my own, but pulled from other tech reviewers and streamlined into Siege-specific information. I found that the Gamer Nexus benchmarks were the most relevant due to majority of the player base playing on 1080p. As of yet, I do not believe Siege supports SAM, which stands for Smart Access Memory, which is basically a way for the processor to gain full access to the video RAM instead of small blocks of it like traditionally. If Siege does support it in the future, we might even see performance increases. Note, this is pure speculation on my point. Regardless, that's pretty much more FPS than you should ever need playing Siege at 1080p. So if you want to fully use the rest of that graphical power, this also allows for 1440p 240Hz or 4K 144Hz combination to be viable for Siege now. If you are going the NVIDIA route instead, a 3080 is not far behind at around 460 FPS, with your 1% lows being around 350. This card is still a beast, and if you want to stream and record, this is actually likely a better purchase, as the RTX series of functionality will allow for better encoding without taking a hit to your frame rate. This next graph shows off the benchmarks for all the recent generations of graphic cards at 1440p to demonstrate a semi-tier list of graphics cards across all the recent generations. This is with a high CPU, however, so your actual in-game FPS may vary. However, the reviewers typically turn up every setting on max, so they are not always the most accurate representation of what you're going to see in game. This graph also does a really good job showing off the performance throughout all the generations of video cards. Some of the cards listed here are either not available or the prices are so close to the new generations of cards, it's almost crazy to purchase one. For example, the card I use currently, the AMD Vega 64, goes for $650 on Amazon at the time of this recording. That's the same price as a brand new 6800 XT if you can happen to get one. If you've given up on trying to get a new graphics card and you're trying to get one from the older generation, I definitely recommend looking to pick up an NVIDIA, specifically a 2000 series or a 1650 for a budget build. I want to know, I do not recommend any card in the AMD 5000 series. They've been a complete disaster in terms of drivers, and in a recent college match that I actually casted, I had a player disconnect repeatedly due to his graphics card drivers dying on him. And when I asked Spudman, who's my fellow tech nerd, good friend of mine, programmer, and PC building enthusiast about the cards, well, let me just play back a little bit of our conversation during the time we were building our recommended lists. Okay. I was like, should we not recommend this at all?
I cannot recommend anybody buy a 500 series AMD card. They're just no. They have no redeeming performance qualities anymore.
Sorry for the long explanation, but I felt like that little quote there, when I heard it, kind of personally encapsulated my thought process on the entire AMD 5000 series. Now on to CPUs. In terms of high-end processors, AMD for the first time in years is on top. They are basically crushing Intel in this generation, winning in both gaming as well as productivity performance. AMD's Ryzen's values throughout all the power levels as well cannot be understated. They are the only CPU I'm recommending for my builds. My productivity and game performance since switching over to the 3000 series a year ago has been unmatched. Due to that, and knowing Intel is no longer innovating currently, has me put them on the back burner. My top pick goes to the 5900X, which touts a absolutely killer high FPS. followed up by the 5600X being kind of a high to mid-tier CPU, and my budget pick of choice is the 3300X. Next up is monitors, where there's quite a variety of choices. So I'll stick to the details of what you're looking for before I start giving recommendations. So for Siege, a 1080p 240Hz monitor that has a 1 millisecond response time is the end game for most pro players, with BenQ monitors being the most popular with those same people. The BenQ Zowie XL2546 24-inch monitor is the most recent model that I would recommend that those pro players seem to love. But this is an expensive monitor and will set you back around $470 at the time of this recording. However, it is top of the line. If you're looking to stick with 1080p but drop down to 144Hz, which is my minimum recommendation for Siege by the way, there's the BenQ Zowie XL2411, which goes for around $200. Or if you can find it, my personal budget choice and the monitor which I set up and tested for my wife's rig is the Nexus EDG 24, which typically goes for around $160 if you can find them. Both are a 144Hz, 1 millisecond response time, FreeSync supported monitors. If you're looking to up the resolution, I also have a Nexus monitor. I have the EDG 27, which is a 1440p 144Hz monitor. It's a great overall gaming monitor, it really is gorgeous. But since it's an IPS panel, which gives you great color accuracy, but however, it doesn't have the fastest response time, so it's really not the most perfect monitor for competitive gaming. However, if your pockets are deep and you're looking for a 1440p 240Hz monitor to flex off the power of the new parts that you probably just purchased, the Omen X27 is a very, very sexy monitor. For any of the recommendations I've mentioned, there will be a link in the description below. Also, if you're looking for a full PC build, I'll provide links to 3 different builds that I put together. A top-of-the-line esports, a mid-range, as well as a budget build, with the budget build coming in at around $750. If you have any other questions about builds, tech questions, or any Siege questions at all, I stream every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at twitch.tv/Jpeasy. You can also join the Discord community with hundreds of others where you can interact with me regularly. So I hope that information was beneficial, and as always, my name is Jpeasy. Take it easy.